Hello and welcome to Public Speaking Tips and Tales with Speaking Coach Kelly. This podcast is dedicated to helping you become a more confident and effective speaker. I'm your host, Kelly K. Walker, and each week we'll dive headfirst into the deep end of public speaking. I'll share real stories from the stage, interview other speakers, and evaluate speeches to show you what works on stage and what doesn't. So let's get started. Last month, I judged 22 speakers sharing a 10-minute speech for our first annual Speaker Games competition. Based on that experience, I have noticed a lot of common mistakes people made and a lot of common things they do right. So in today's episode, I want to share those with you so you can learn from my experience also. Let's start with the mistakes first. The number one reason speakers didn't make it into the finals was that they didn't tell a personal story that taught us a lesson. They had good information, and some even had stories, but we felt like some of them didn't fully grasp this very important concept. Teach a lesson while connecting with your audience by telling a powerful personal story. Let me repeat that. Teach a lesson while connecting with your audience by telling a powerful personal story. I recommend to everyone that in order to understand the power of telling stories, they read the book Storyworthy by Matthew Dix. I'll put the link in my show notes. Please go get this book if you want to be a better speaker. Storyworthy by Matthew Dix. The vulnerability of sharing a painful, hard, or embarrassing story opens you up for deep connection with your audience. And I understand that for some people, it's really difficult to expose their belly, so to speak, but it's what makes the difference between a listening audience and an invested audience. You don't just want your audience to listen passively to you. You want them to be fully invested in your story. And most especially, they want to hear about your happy ending after your horribly painful struggle, because they might be in that struggle too, and they want to know that there is hope for them to have a happy ending themselves by hearing about your happy ending. Which leads me to the second most common reason people were cut from the competition. They had no trouble sharing their horribly painful struggle, but that's almost all they talked about. Out of a 10-minute speech, we were often experiencing 7 to 8 minutes spent in the pit. Now, if you don't know what that means, the pit of a story is where you hit rock bottom. And trust me, as a speaker, you don't want to keep people down at rock bottom with you for very long. They could end up worse off than before they heard you speak if you wallow in that pit with them for more than 10% of your total speaking time. That means if you have a 10-minute speech, you can't share the negative part of your story for longer than 1 minute. And if you can keep it to 5% of your total speaking time, which is 30 seconds of a 10-minute talk, oh, you will give such an amazingly powerful speech. For me, the perfect speech structure goes like this. Assuming it's a 10-minute speech, 1 minute to set up your story, and that includes your attention grabber. So however you come out, start strong and get to setting up your story. This is the before. What was your life like before the conflict happened? So then the second minute, spend that time introducing the conflict or the villain, and take us down to the pit, but only get us really low in it for the second half of that minute. Then spend the next minute jumping out of that pit and introducing your lifeline, your guide, your saving moment, whatever it was that transformed you from victim to victor. Spend the next 5 or so minutes sharing your transformation journey, and especially the tools that helped you get through that journey. The tools that got you out of the pit, from victim to victor, and really made a difference in your life. Things that actually worked. Don't give tools that other coaches have given you that you haven't used. I think that's really important as a speaker. Don't try to pass off other people's tools as having had been pivotal in your transformation if they weren't. Only teach tools that you actually used. During this part, you can tell little mini stories with mini pits and mini lifelines to keep the energy rising and falling like a roller coaster. Next, spend about a minute pulling it all together and wrapping up the story with the beautiful lesson, including the ripple effects of your triumph over the conflict/villain, and get your energy as high above the normal line as your pit took us low under the normal line. In other words, take us just as high as you took us low. And then spend that final minute with your call to action. Give us our next step that we can take after we're on our own and you are no longer leading us by the hand with your speech. If you follow this outline, you will never get stuck in the pit for too long. The third most common mistake I saw was speakers having a brain fart and pointing it out to us. Audiences often have no idea that you forgot what you were going to say, but if you stop and get all upset and point it out, swear about it, or apologize for it, everyone will know that you made a mistake, and then your whole flow will be hopelessly messed up. You may be asking, yeah, but what do I do when I forget what I was going to say? Easy. Stop, look down at your heart, and tune into your emotions. Your brain was running the show, but it got overheated and needed a little reboot, and now it's up to your heart to pick up the thread and continue the pattern. And here's a bonus. When you pause and look down at your heart, everyone in the room will feel emotion coming off of you in waves. They'll think that you are so into your story that you have to stop and regroup so you don't lose control of your emotions. This pause to get back on track with your talk becomes a powerful moment of connection with your audience, a connection that you wouldn't have had if you hadn't had the brain fart. If you get through a really long pause and you still can't figure out what to say next, go back to your story. Add some more to it. Usually this means more of the victory side of the story, though. Don't go back down into the pit. You could describe how your story affected someone you love, for instance. Remember, stories are the best part of any speech, so when all else fails, just tell another story. Your only challenge there will be make sure you can find a way to tie it into your call to action as you're telling it, because you want it to all make sense in the end. But if you do this, nobody will ever know that you forgot half of your speech. Now that we've covered the top 3 mistakes I saw during the 22 speaking auditions for Speaker Games, let's move on to the things people did right. Oh, and by the way, tickets are available to just come watch the competition on July 13th. So if you want to see those speakers firsthand, come join the fun. Speaker Games will be held at Industry Salt Lake City in downtown Salt Lake all day long, July 13th. And tickets are only $10 online or $20 at the door. And you can find the link in my show notes. Okay, back to the to-do list. Things we saw the best speakers doing include telling really vulnerable stories that spent just the bare minimum of time in the pit. They didn't wallow. They let us dip our toe in their deepest pain and then pulled us up immediately. Stories of unexpected lessons from perceived failures that turned out to be exactly what they needed were the best stories of all. Everyone loves an underdog and a Cinderella story. So if you're hiding your pain and making yourself look stronger, smarter, and more together than you really are, you are disconnecting from the audience and are therefore going to be unable to move them. All right, the second thing that the best speakers did was to match their facial expressions and body language to their words. There is nothing weirder than watching someone grin from ear to ear while telling a horrific story of pain and suffering. Seeing a visual that contradicts the words you are hearing is an example of cognitive dissonance, and people don't like to feel cognitive dissonance. So match your face to your words, and people will lose themselves in that moment you are describing. You will transport them through time and space to the memory you are describing in your story. The third thing that the best speakers had in common was that they taught us a strong lesson or gave us a great call to action. We didn't have to wonder what the point of their speech was. It was obvious and clear to all four judges. We understood the journey we had just been on with them, and we clearly saw the next step we could take if we wanted to continue on that journey for ourselves. Clear, simple calls to action make a powerful ending to a powerful talk. So let's recap. 3 biggest mistakes we saw were no personal story that taught us a lesson, staying too long in the sad pit of the story, and letting a brain fart destroy their speech completely. And the 3 best things we saw were telling vulnerable stories with minimal time in the sad pit, matching their facial expressions and body language to their words, and having a strong call to action at the end. I hope you enjoyed my little recap of what I learned and what I saw at auditions. If you want to be a better speaker, or if you just want to come watch some amazing speakers in action, please join us at the finals of our first annual Speaker Games, July 13th, 2024 in Salt Lake City, Utah. You can find the ticket link in my show notes. Tickets are $10 online or $20 at the door. And if you don't know how to find the show notes, then you can just go to the link, which is www.kellykwalker.com/speaker games, and then scroll down to the bottom of the page for the ticket link. Let me spell my name for you because people always get my middle name wrong. It is Kelly, Kelly, KayWalker.com. Kelly, K spelled out Kaye, Walker.com, and then /speaker games. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you will find the link to purchase a ticket. We hope you join us there. It's going to be so fun. It is from 9 to 5 on July 13th at Industry, Salt Lake City. I hope we see you there. All right, thanks for listening. As always, if you want to be on the show to either have your speech evaluated or share a story from the stage, please email me at speakingcoachkelly@gmail.com. And if you want to be evaluated, in the subject line, put evaluate me. And if you just want to be a guest and share a story from the stage, in the subject line, please put guest. If you need help coming up with your signature presentation, if you don't know what to speak on or you don't know what stories to share, I can help. I wrote a 16-page workbook designed specifically to help speakers figure out which of their stories to tell, and I would love to give it to you for free. So if you would like to get that, just go to www.kellykwalker.com/workbook. Also, you could just email me asking me for the workbook if you can't remember that URL. My email is speakingcoachkelly@gmail.com. All right, thanks a lot for listening. I am excited to be doing this podcast, and I can't wait for my next episode.